Hello friends, welcome to another video of Zeta Axis, and today we are going to discuss the agricultural crops of North American continent. In this video, we will discuss all the important crops grown in North American continent. So first, let's see the agricultural or croplands of whole world. Here we can see that the green color indicates the total area in the world where crops are grown. Remember, cropland indicates the total area used for crop cultivation, while agricultural lands include the land for crop cultivation as well as for animal husbandry or associated works. So these are the croplands across the world, and if we see the comparison, then we can clearly see that United States is at second position in the total croplands across all the countries. Canada is at 6th and Mexico is at 13th. From this we can clearly see that a lot of agricultural activity occurs across the North American continent. Now let's see the agricultural croplands in North America. Here we can see that these are the agricultural croplands. We can see that here there are croplands in the center of Canada. Then across the central and eastern side of North America, we can see that there are large croplands, and even in Mexico, we can see that on both the coasts, we can see there are agricultural lands. If we see the physiological characteristics, then we can see that here we have the North American Cordillera, that is chain of mountains. Here we have Appalachian mountains, and here we have Canadian Sea. So all these three physiological characteristics, they restrict the area of croplands, and we can see that most of the croplands is concentrated within the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains. We can see that they are in the Great Plains or the central lowlands. Now if we see the major crops which are grown in the three major countries of North America, then we can see that in USA, corn is the most important crop, followed by soybean, wheat, and then there are others. While in Canada, wheat is the most important crop, followed by rapeseed, corn, and barley. And in Mexico, we have corn as the most important crop, and then we have sorghum, which is jowar, and wheat. So these are the important crops in the three important countries of North America. Now let's see the wheat production in North America. Here we can see important conditions for wheat cultivation. It requires relatively cooler atmosphere compared to other crops. It requires relatively less rainfall, and it requires well-drained loamy soil. Now remember, all these characteristics are as per Indian characteristics, because I have taken these slides from my presentation on Indian agricultural crops. So therefore you are seeing this Rabi and the season of sowing. So this is not important, just concentrate on these regions where we can see that it requires some cooler temperature and it requires little rainfall. So if we see the cultivation of wheat across the world, we can clearly see that there is very little cultivation below the Tropic of Cancer and below the Tropic of Capricorn. So in the tropical region, there is very little wheat cultivation over here and over here. Most of the wheat cultivation is in the temperate region in both hemispheres. The reason is that the wheat requires slightly cooler atmosphere and little rainfall, and therefore we can see that it is a temperate climate crop or subtropical climate crop, but not tropical climate crop. If you see the wheat production across the world, we can clearly see that United States is at 4th position and Canada is at 7th position. So both of these are major producers of wheat. So let's see wheat production in North America. Here we can clearly see that the wheat croplands of North America are confined to the central region between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains, and some regions are there in Mexico. Moreover, this is above the Tropic of Cancer. Now let's see the wheat production in Canada. Here we can see that the production of Canada is mainly confined to the southern and central states. We can clearly see that there is some production of wheat over in these states. If we see the states of Canada, then we can clearly see that these Alberta and Saskatchewan have the most of production of wheat, while Manitoba, Ontario also has some proportion of production of wheat. And if we see the production wise distribution, then we can see this, that Saskatchewan has 41%, followed by Alberta at 33%, Manitoba at 16%, and Ontario at 9%. So this state has the maximum production of wheat in Canada. Now let's see the wheat production in USA. we can see that the wheat production is restricted to the central region. There are wheat producing regions in eastern as well as western region, but we will see that bulk of the wheat production occurs in these regions in the central US. And this is the region of prairies or steppes, and these are the Great Plains or central lowlands of North American continent. If you see the spread of states, then we can see that right from Washington in the northern side, we have the states in which this wheat is produced. But the majority of wheat is produced in Kansas, Oklahoma, North Dakota. Then we have also Washington and Montana. So all these states are the major producers of wheat in USA. Now let's see wheat production in Mexico. So we can see that wheat is not abundantly produced in Mexico, but still there are some regions which produce a lot of wheat. The most important regions are Sonora, which produces almost 50% of the wheat of Mexico. Then we have Guanajuato, which is 12%. Then we have Sinaloa and Baja California. So all these regions produce wheat in Mexico. Now let's see rice production. Unlike wheat, rice requires hot and humid climate. In fact, it requires a lot of water. It requires flooding of field. This much amount of water is available only in the southern regions, because in the northern part we have cooler climate. So in the southern parts of North America, we will see that there is majority of rice production. In fact, across the globe, we can see that in the temperate region, there is very little cultivation of rice. It is only in the tropical and subtropical zone we see that there is maximum amount of cultivation of rice. You may think that why there is cultivation of rice over here, and there is the warm ocean current over here which increases the temperature of these regions, and therefore you can see that here the production of rice extends in northern part, or it extends in the higher temperate zone. If we see the global production of rice across the world, then we can see that United States is at 14th position, and we do not see any other North American country in this list. So rice is not grown in much amount in North America. So let's see the production of North America. Here we can clearly see that it is confined in the southern parts of North America, especially in the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean Sea region. Now Canada does not produce significant amount of rice to mention. So let's start with rice production in USA. We have seen that most of this rice production occurs in the Gulf of Mexico region, as well as some part of rice production occurs on the western coast in California. Here we can see the distribution based on states, and these are the major states where rice is produced. Arkansas has 49% of the share, followed by California, and then we have Louisiana. So all these three states produce maximum amount of rice in United States of America. Now let's see rice production in Mexico, where we can see that the production of rice is confined to the western coast of Mexico as well as to the eastern coast, and specifically in the Bay of Campeche region of Gulf of Mexico. The majority of the states which produce is Campeche, which has 21% share. We have Nayarit as 27%, and then we have Michoacán with at 13%. Now let's see rice production in Central America. Here we can clearly see that whole of Central America produces rice. So rice is a major crop in the Central American states. Almost each of these states, right from Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Belize and Guatemala, all of them produce rice. However, because they are smaller countries, their production does not come in the charts for the top leading countries of rice production. Now let's see production of cotton in North America. So cotton again requires warmer temperature, and it also requires adequate rainfall. The most important factor which controls the distribution of cotton production is the 210 frost-free days. Remember, for cotton production, we require at least 210 frost-free days. So there should be a continuous 210 days for which there should be no frost in the region. And therefore, when we see the global map of cotton production regions, we can see that there is a cutoff. No region of this produces cotton. The main reason is that there is frost in these regions, and therefore the production of cotton is confined from the tropical and subtropical region. If we see the global production data, we can see that United States come at 4th position. Now let's see cotton production in North America. So here we can clearly see that cotton is produced in the southern states of United States as well as in some parts of Mexico. Some states of Central America as well as Cuba, they also produce cotton. So cotton production in USA, we have seen that cotton is produced in the southern states of United States of America. And remember, this is the reason why there was civil war, because a lot of slaves were required for cotton production in the 19th century. So when Abraham Lincoln abolished the slave trade, these regions, they opposed and there was this civil war. So we can clearly see that the cotton production is confined to the southern states of United States of America. We can see the distribution as per states, and the majority cotton producing states are Texas, then we have Arkansas as 9%, Mississippi at 7%, Georgia at 16%. So these are the majority of cotton producing states of United States of America. Now let's see Mexico. We can see that most of the cotton in Mexico is produced in the northern parts, right from Baja California, we have Chihuahua, and then we have Coahuila, all of these producing cotton. Now cotton production in Central America is also confined to several states. We have Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Guatemala. All of them produce cotton in smaller proportions. Even El Salvador also produces cotton. So cotton is produced in almost all of these Central American states. Now let's see maize or corn production. Remember, maize and corn are the same crop. It is based on the region. You can use any of these names. So the condition for maize is again that it requires slightly higher temperature compared to wheat, but slightly lower compared to rice and cotton. It requires again mid to lower rainfall, and it can be grown in semi-arid region. It is drought tolerant. So this is an important feature. Now that is why you can see that maize is again little bit more extended in the higher latitudes. We can see that in both the hemispheres, the corn production occurs in little bit higher latitudes. If you see the global production, then United States tops the list of global producers of corn, while Mexico is at 7th position. Canada is at 12th. So let's discuss maize production in North America. We can see this is the region of maize production in North America, and we can see that line of cancer will pass somewhere from here, and most of the production occurs in this region. There are also states in Central America which produce corn. If we start with Canada, then we can see that corn is produced in the southern states of Canada. Most of the production in Canada is confined to these states. Here we can see the distribution across states, and we will notice that it is mainly Ontario and Quebec where the production occurs. So 63% of corn production in Canada is from Ontario and 26% is from Quebec. So these two states, they produce significant amount of corn in Canada. Now let's see corn production in United States of America. We can see that this is in the central and eastern states of Canada. And this is also the region where we have Great Plains, Prairies, and we have central lowlands. This is the Great Lake region. So abundant amount of water is present for cultivation of corn. Here we have Appalachian Mountains. So we can see that no significant production of corn occurs in this region. Here is the spread of states across which we can see that corn is produced. There is some corn production on the western coast as well as in Washington and California. But most important states are Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana, where Iowa and Illinois have the first and second position in maize or corn production of United States. Now let's see maize production in Mexico. So we can see here that most of the maize production in Mexico is confined to the southern region of Mexico or southern states of Mexico. And the most important states are Sinaloa, Jalisco, and Mexico. So in the southern part of Mexico, we see large amount of corn or maize production. Even in the Central America, we have seen that there are countries which produce corn. Panama produces a very small amount. Nicaragua has significant. Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, all of them produce significant proportion of corn in their croplands. Now let's see soybean production in North America. So we can see that it requires relatively warmer temperature, but it can survive in cooler temperatures as well. It requires less rainfall. So here is the global distribution of production of soybean, and we can see that it is extended in the higher latitudes, both in northern hemisphere and in southern hemisphere. In fact, in Asia as well as in North America, we can see that the soybean is produced in higher latitudes. And if we see the global production, then we can see that United States is second after Brazil, and we have Canada over here. Now let's see soybean production in North America. Here we can see that the production of soybean in North America extends from central regions of Canada till Central America. It extends from higher latitudes in the temperate region, extends across subtropical region and in tropical region. So we can see that soybean is crop of temperate, subtropical and tropical region. So let's start with soybean production in Canada. Here we can see that the production of soybean is confined to the southern states of Canada, in fact the southern region of Canada, and the production is stretched right from the eastern coast till we have Alberta. British Columbia does not produce significant amount of soybean. Now if we see the proportion, then we have Ontario, which is at 55%, then we have Manitoba, and then we have Saskatchewan and Quebec. So all these are the majority of soybean producing states of Canada. Now let's see soybean production in United States of America. We can again see that soybean is produced in the central as well as eastern side of United States of America, and the majority of states which produce soybean are Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Illinois, Indiana and Ohio, where Iowa and Illinois are the two most important producers of soybean in United States of America. Now let's see soybean production in Mexico. So here we can see that soybean is produced on both eastern and western coast of Mexico as well as in the Gulf of Campeche region. So we can see the important states which produce soybean in Mexico. Now let's see soybean production in Central America. So soybean is produced in almost all the states of Central America except for Costa Rica, where a not significant amount of soybean is produced. So right from Panama, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala and Belize, all of them produce significant amount of soybean. Next is barley. So barley is a crop of subtropical region and it can grow in cooler atmospheres. It is very drought resistant and requires less amount of water. And that is why we can again see that it is spread across higher latitudes, in fact higher than soybean. We can see that barley is even produced in Sweden and Finland. So this is a crop of temperate regions, and we can clearly see that below Tropic of Cancer there is not much barley producing regions. If you see the global production data, then we can see that Canada is at 5th position and United States is at 12th position. Now let's see the barley produced in North America. We can see that it is produced right from Alaska. There are some stretches of land in Alaska where barley is produced. Then we have Canada, again in the Prairie region of Canada, and then we have across United States of America we can see barley production. Even in Mexico we can see barley production, and even in the Central American states there is barley production. So let's start with Canada. Here we can see that barley production occurs in the southern region, in the prairies as well as in the Great Lake region of Canada. The states which produce in majority are the Alberta and Saskatchewan. Both of these are the two most important states from barley perspective. British Columbia produces very less amount of barley. Now let's see barley production in United States of America. Here we can see that the barley production is concentrated in the northern side of United States of America, even though it is stretched from western coast to eastern coast. The majority of the states which produce barley in United States of America are North Dakota, Montana and Idaho. Now let's see barley production in Mexico. Again, here we can see that the barley production occurs on the eastern coast of Mexico as well as in Baja Peninsula. So here are the states which produce barley in Mexico. If you see the states of Central America which produce barley, then we can see that most of the production in Central America is confined to Guatemala. Now let's see sugarcane production. Sugarcane also requires warm climate and it requires adequate rainfall. This is a water intensive crop, so adequate amount of water is necessary for sugarcane production. If we see the world map, then these green dots, they indicate the region where the sugarcane is produced. If you see the global data, Then we can see that Mexico is at 6th position. We have Guatemala at 9th and United States of America at 10th. We can see that Guatemala is above United States of America. So significant amount of sugarcane production occurs in Guatemala. So let's see sugarcane production in USA. Here we can see by these yellow dots the production region of sugarcane. In this map we can clearly visualize it is concentrated in Florida. Here we can see in Texas, and also in this region we can see that sugarcane is produced. So the states which produce sugarcane are basically Florida at 46%, Louisiana at 44%, and some amount is produced in Texas. Now let's see sugarcane production in Mexico, where again we can see that Mexico is produced on the eastern coast as well as on western coast as well as in Bay of Campeche in the Yucatan Peninsula. And these are the regions where the red dots indicate the region where the sugarcane is produced here. And these are the states. You can see their names and their percentage. Now let's see sugarcane production in Central America. We have already seen that Guatemala is one of the top producers of sugarcane across the world. It is in fact the 9th largest producer of sugarcane across the world. So in the western coast of Guatemala, which we can see in this figure, there is concentration of sugarcane production. Now let's see coffee production in North America. Coffee is also a tropical crop and it requires warm climate and adequate rainfall, but it is grown on hill slopes because the coffee crop cannot have waterlogging. If there is more water requirement and you are growing on a plain region, then there is a high probability of waterlogging. That is why coffee as well as tea are grown on the hill slopes, which ensures that there is no waterlogging, because this is extremely harmful to coffee. Here we see global regions across the world which produce coffee, and we can clearly see they are concentrated in the tropical regions between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Across the world, they are in between these two lines. They are in the tropical zone. If you see the global production data, then we see that a lot of countries from Central America are among the top producers of coffee. We have Honduras, we have Guatemala, Mexico, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica in this list. So let's start with coffee production in Mexico. So as we have seen, most of the coffee production is concentrated in the southern states, specifically the states in the Isthmus zone as well as in the Bay of Campeche. So we can see that most of the coffee production in Mexico occurs in these states, and these states name are Veracruz, which is the most important coffee producer, and then there are other states. Now if you see coffee production in Central America, then we can see that Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama, all these states, they produce coffee, out of which Honduras, Guatemala, and Nicaragua are most important producers of coffee in this region. With this, we will conclude our video on the agricultural crops of North America. If you have liked the video, then do subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. If you like what we are doing, then you can support us using the Paytm ID. Thanks for watching the video.